Hello, hello. Welcome back to No Me Callo. I won't stay quiet. I'm your host, Jessica Lomelin, and today I want you to do something with me before we continue. Take a deep breath. Inhale. Exhale. This episode might confront you because it's going to make you think about all those times you swallowed a no. All those times you made yourself smaller just to avoid making others uncomfortable. All those times you choose peace on the outside, while inside you were at war with yourself. But also this episode will set you free because it frees you from the narrative you were taught. It frees you from the guilt you carry like it belongs to you. And it frees you from the idea that to be a good person, you have to put yourself last. Today's episode is called Saying No Without Guilt. And if you're like so many people who are always there for everyone, the one who fixed things, who hold everything together, who never dropped the ball, then saying no was probably never simple for you. It was never just a word. It was a weight, an internal conflict, a silent battle. So you know what to do. Get comfortable, grab your coffee, your cafecito, your glass of wine or a cold beer, and get ready to chismear with me. But saying no for many people doesn't feel like a decision. It feels more like a risk of losing someone, of them pulling away, of things changing between you, a risk of disappointing, of not living up to the version of you that others expect, a risk of making things uncomfortable, of breaking that image of being easy, accessible, always available, a risk of being seen differently, as selfish, as cold, as someone who's not the same anymore. And let's be honest, many times, it's not the no that hurts. It's everything you believe will happen after you say it. So I want you to think about this. How many times have you said yes when everything in your body was screaming no? And not a soft no, not a maybe, a clear no. A no you felt in your chest. A no that made your body tense. A no you knew was the truth. And still, you said yes. Yes to plans you didn't want, and then you spent the whole time counting the hours to leave. Yes to conversations that drained you, where you walked away emotionally exhausted. Yes to responsibilities that weren't even yours, but you carry them like they were. Yes to people who weren't even showing up for you the way you showed up for them. And not because you wanted to, not because it came from you, because saying no felt worse. It felt heavier, more dangerous, more uncomfortable, because saying no came with guilt, immediate guilt, the kind that shows up in your chest, that makes you overthink, that makes you want to go back, explain, soften it, and fix it. That guilt that whispers, what if they get upset? What if they think badly of you? What if they don't love you the same anymore? And without even realizing it, you started associating something very basic, very human, very necessary with something bad. And this is where I want you to place close attention. That guilt didn't start with you. You weren't born feeling guilty for saying no. You weren't born believing that setting boundaries was selfish. And you weren't born thinking that choosing yourself meant failing someone else. That guilt, you learned it. You learned it in silence, in looks, and unspoken expectations that were still deeply felt. You learned it when you were praised for enduring, but not when you chose yourself. You learned it when being good meant being available, always. You learned it when saying no came with emotional consequences, when it was followed by rejection, distance, or disapproval. And little by little, without even realizing it, you stopped trusting your no. You started questioning it, softening it, justifying it, until you reached the point where saying yes became automatic and saying no became an internal conflict. And I think many of us didn't grow up learning how to listen to ourselves. We grew up learning how to adapt, to read the room, to feel the energy, to know when to speak and when to stay quiet. We grew up in spaces where saying no wasn't seen as self-care. It was seen as disrespect, as rebellion, as attitude, as something that needed to be corrected. And so you started to shape yourself to become what was more acceptable. The good daughter, the one who doesn't cause problems, the one who understands, who cooperates, who doesn't question too much. The good son, the one who follows through, who carries the weight, who shows up even when he's tired. The good friend, the one who's always there, who always listens, who always says yes, even when inside they're slowly breaking. You became that reliable person for everyone, but you slowly stopped being reliable for yourself. And that didn't happen overnight. It happened in small moments. In that yes, you said to avoid conflict. In that silence, you chose to keep things comfortable. And that boundary you didn't set because you felt like you didn't have the right. And little by little, you learned something very dangerous. Something that sounds good on the outside, but wears you down on the inside. You learned that your worth was in how much you gave, in how much you could hold without complaining, in how much you could endure without breaking in front of others, and how much you could sacrifice without asking for anything in return. You learned that the more people needed you, the more valuable you were. That the more available you were, the more loved you felt. The less space you took, the more acceptable you became. And without realizing it, you started building your identity around that, around being the strong one, the one who can handle everything, the one who fixes things, the one who doesn't fail. But no one taught you that this version of you came with a cost, an emotional cost, a mental cost, an internal cost that isn't always visible, but it's deeply felt. Because the more you gave outward, the more you were emptying yourself within. So imagine this. Someone asks you for a favor. And it's not something huge, but it's not small either. It's one of those things you know will take your time, your energy, your patience. And in that moment, you already know. You know you're tired. You know you don't feel like doing it. You know that honestly, you need to say no. Like your body already decided before you did. You feel that, that I don't want to do this. That drop in your energy. That little voice inside you that says, I just don't want to do this. But still, you say, yeah, it's okay, I'll do it. Almost automatically. Like you already knew the script. And the other person, totally fine. They say thank you, go on with their day, everything is good, right? But you're left with it. And that weird feeling starts, like anxiety, like discomfort, like something just isn't right. And then the thoughts come. Why did I say yes? I didn't even want to. I'm already so tired and now I have to do this too. And that's when the frustration shows up. But it's not like you get mad at the other person because if we're honest, they didn't force you. So that frustration turns inward. Like, again, you did it again. You didn't choose yourself again. And it doesn't feel good. It feels like frustration, like disappointment in yourself, because deep down, you didn't know what you needed, but you didn't give it to yourself. And that hits differently because it's not that someone else let you down. It's that you put yourself last again. And the wild part is that this happens all the time in small things and big things with close people, with coworkers. It becomes a pattern. You know you want to say no, but something in you gets activated and you say yes anyway. And it's not because you can't say no. It's because in some way you learned that saying yes was safer, easier, less conflict, like it helped you avoid problems. But no one told you that afterward, you would be the one holding the problem. And this is where I want you to sit with something. Every time you do this, it's not that you're agreeing to something you didn't want. It's that you're ignoring yourself. It's like a part of you speaks and you respond with, not right now, wait your turn. This is more important. And if you do that enough times, you start disconnecting from yourself. You start doubting what you feel, what you want, what you need, because you're not listening anymore. And yeah, this might be a little hard to hear, but it's also really important because this isn't about blaming yourself. It's about seeing it clearly, being able to say, okay, this is happening to me. Now, what am I going to do with it? And this is where the cycle begins. And if I'm being honest, I'm pretty sure many of us don't even know that we're in this cycle because you promise yourself the next time it will be different. You tell yourself, next time I will say no. Next time I'll take care of myself. Next time I won't let this happen. And you believe it. You really do. You feel this momentary relief, like you've already solved it. But then life keeps going. And the next time comes. And it's almost the same scene. Someone asks you for something or invites you somewhere or puts you in a situation where you know exactly what you want to say, but that discomfort shows up again. That small internal conflict. Because one part of you does want to say no. But another part panics at the idea of making someone uncomfortable, of disappointing them, looking bad, creating tension. And in that moment, habit wins and you say yes again. And that's when you're left thinking, okay, again, and you'll ask yourself, why does this keep happening? If I already know, if I already understand, and the answer is, you don't know. And it's that discomfort of saying no that still feels too big, bigger than the awkward silence, bigger than someone's disappointed reaction, bigger than that brief moment of tension, and most of all, bigger than the pain you feel after abandoning yourself. Because that's the hardest part of this cycle. In the moment saying yes, it feels easier, it feels safer, it feels like you're avoiding an immediate problem. But the cost isn't paid in that moment, it's paid later. When you're alone with yourself, when everything has passed, when no one is asking anything of you anymore, then it's just you, sitting with that yes you never wanted to give. And I want to clarify something. Saying no is not rejecting someone. It's choosing yourself. And I know that sounds simple when you say it like that, but in real life, it might feel completely different. Because sometimes when you say no, the first thing that shows up isn't peace, it's guilt. That feeling of, what if they think something about me? What if they get upset? What if I change how they see me? But still, saying no is not rejecting anyone. It's listening to yourself first. Saying no is not selfish. It's being honest. It's stopping the quiet self-betrayal just to keep everyone else comfortable. And this is important to understand because so many of us were taught the opposite. That being a good person meant saying yes. That being considerate meant always being available. That being kind meant never making anyone uncomfortable. But the truth is, you can be a good person and still say no. Saying no is not losing love. It's choosing not to negotiate your peace. Because maybe you don't have a problem loving others. The issue is that you forgot to include yourself in that equation. And something that I want you to repeat with me, even if it's just in your mind, a full no doesn't need a long story behind it. It doesn't need defense. It doesn't need over-explaining. It doesn't need to be softened so much that it loses its shape. It only needs truth. And I know this might feel uncomfortable at first because you're probably not used to speaking like this. You're probably used to over-justifying yourself, explaining everything, giving context, softening the impact, filling the silence so no one feels uncomfortable. But the problem is, the more you explain, the more you start doubting your own no. For example, before you might say something like, I'm sorry, it's just been a super busy week. I'm tired, I haven't slept well, and I don't know if I can, but maybe if I organized myself. How many people have said that? I'm pretty sure a lot of us have. And in that maybe, you already lost yourself because it's no longer a clear boundary. It's a negotiation with yourself. But now it can be as simple as, you know what, I can't, that's it. And silence. You breathe, you don't add anything else, you don't fill the uncomfortable space with explanation, you just let the moment exist. Another example, before you might say, I don't want you to feel bad, but I don't think I can, or maybe another day. And again, you're prioritizing someone else's reaction over your own truth. But now you can say, that's not something I can do, period. No justification, no opening the door for discussion, no wrapping it in guilt. And yes, trust me, I know, it took me time to change this too because at first I felt so uncomfortable speaking like this. And not because I was doing something wrong, but because I was breaking a pattern. And you're doing something different. You're stopping what used to be automatic. And when you break a pattern, your body notices first. Your mind starts to question it. And guilt shows up like an old signal saying, go back to what's familiar, but familiar is not always healthy. So today, I want to invite you to do something very simple, but I'm telling you this with full intention because simple doesn't mean easy. The next time you want to say no, do it, but really do it. Not that no you later over-explain, not that no you soften afterward, not that no you end up taking back because someone made you feel uncomfortable. No, a clean no, a clear no. A no that doesn't have to earn the right to exist. No unnecessary explanation. No justifying it to make it valid. No adding stories so the other person understands it better. Just truth. And I want you to imagine that moment when you say, when it comes out and when the air feels a little different. Because yes, there will be discomfort. There will be that second where your body wants to fix it. It will want to smile more. It will want to say, wait, hold on. It will want to step back. And this is where everything changes because this time you don't leave yourself. When the discomfort comes, don't run, don't panic, don't start filling the silence with explanation just to make it easier for the other person. Don't go back and undo your boundary. Don't soften it until it disappears. Stay with yourself. Stay in that moment even if it feels strange. Stay even if you're not used to it. Stay even if your mind says, just explain again. Just stay, because that is the moment where you begin to break the cycle. And before I close this episode, I want to leave you with something that can support you through this process. A book that really connects with what we talked about today, and it's called Set Boundaries, Find Peace by Nedra Glover. And I'm sharing it because this book doesn't just talk about boundaries as a concept. It brings them into real life, into those uncomfortable conversations, into that quiet guilt, into those patterns where you say yes when you wanted to say no. And it helps you understand something many of us were never taught, that boundaries are not about pushing people away. They're about bringing you closer to yourself. So I highly recommend it. And I also want to leave you with some simple things that you can start practicing from today. First, practice saying no in small spaces. And you don't have to start with the hardest situations. Start with everyday moments like, today I can't, not today, I don't have it in me, today I don't want to. And second, give yourself permission to pause before responding. You don't have to answer immediately. You can say, let me think about it and I'll get back to you. That small space can change everything because it gives you back something you often lose, the ability to listen to yourself before reacting. And third, observe yourself after you say no. But don't judge yourself, just observe. Did you feel anxious? Did you feel guilty? Did you feel the urge to over-explain? And not to fix yourself, but maybe the most important part of this entire episode is not learning how to say no. It's what happens after. When you've already said it, when you can take it back, when it's just you. Because that's where, in that uncomfortable space, you start rebuilding something very deep. Trust with yourself. Because learning to say no without guilt is not about becoming hard or cold. And it's not about shutting down. It's not about becoming less loving or less kind. It's about becoming honest with yourself. It's about stopping the need to explain yourself in order to exist. It's about stopping the negotiation of your peace to maintain other people comfortable. It's about stopping the self-abandonment in the name of harmony. And it's about slowly learning to trust your voice again, what you feel, what you need, and what you already know but didn't allow yourself to hear before. In the description of this episode, you'll find the Amazon link with the full list of books featured in No Me Callo, I Won't Stay Quiet, from the very first episode all the way to today. And don't forget that every Friday there's a new episode waiting for you. The third episode of this series is called When They Stop Choosing You Because You Chose Yourself. And yes, it sounds intense because it is. This episode isn't about leaving people behind. It's about something much more confusing. When you didn't leave them, but they still left. When you didn't change for the worse, but you no longer fit the same. When you started healing and suddenly some relationships didn't feel the same anymore. And this is where the grief no one prepares you begins. The grief of growth, because growth doesn't always feel like expansion. Sometimes it feels like loss. You start noticing small things, that they don't understand you the same anymore, that your boundaries make people uncomfortable, that your peace now looks like distance, that your new version no longer fits in spaces where you once belonged effortlessly. And suddenly, you start asking yourself things like, did I change too much? Am I becoming difficult? Or am I growing alone? And the hardest part is realizing this, that some people don't miss who you are today. They miss who you were when you forgot about yourself, when you said yes without thinking, when you didn't set boundaries, when you were easier to access but less you. And in this episode, we're going to talk about that uncomfortable moment when you realize that not everyone is ready for that version of you, about how growth can also mean loss, about that quiet fear that shows up when you start asking yourself, what if choosing myself means I end up alone? But you're not losing people, you're finding yourself, because in the end, you're not difficult, you're just different now. And that is also growth. And many of us have experienced it, but a few dare to say it out loud. Sometimes growth hurts because it changes who stays. So don't miss it. You were listening to No Me Callo, I Won't Stay Quiet. I'm your host, Jessica Lomelin. Until next time.